Generally, when people get a job selling exotic cars, they make some crazy personal financial decision. And the most common one is to buy a motorcycle. And Georgia is a little bit peculiar in that to get motorcycle insurance, you have to have a motorcycle license. And to get a motorcycle license, you have to take the test. And to take the test, you have to have a motorcycle. So you have to have it before you can insure it.
Yeah, that seems ass backwards.
And they will finance them without you having insurance or a license. So you can get a loan for a non-insured asset and then go through the process and hopefully be able to insure it. And so we had a lot of guys that would come in and literally the first week they buy a motorcycle. And one of the guys' name was Nick, and he was young, just I'm so cool. I'm selling exotic cars. I'm everything I want to be. And so he buys this Victory motorcycle, and I don't know what it's like, $15,000, and finances every dollar of it. As most car salesmen have a tremendous amount of negative equity in their cars. It's a strange thing, or motorcycles too. And he's never ridden one. Doesn't have any of the steps completed. Doesn't have a license. Doesn't have insurance. Nothing. And so I'm on the phone actually trying to buy a Bugatti for a customer, and it's like a nice kind of fall day. We got the doors all open, and it was getting time to close. And so I hear them outside, and one of the guys that worked at the store that knew how to ride a motorcycle was like, well, I'm going to pull it inside. They had dropped it off to us. Like, he didn't drive it away from the dealership. They came and gave it to him. And so it was in a lot, and they started, it was pulling it in. And he's like, hey, I just want to sit on my new motorcycle. And one of the rules of motorcycles is you don't sit on one without a helmet. And if you don't know how to drive one, you don't sit on one while it's running. And, because with a car, like if you don't know what you're doing and you just do nothing, you'll usually slowly roll into whatever's in front of you. With a motorcycle, if you suddenly let go and do nothing, you launch into whatever is in front of you. And so he was probably about 18, 20 feet from the back of a Porsche Panamera. And he obviously just kind of doesn't know what he's doing, tries to make it move, and just drops the clutch and blasts himself into this Panamera and shatters the back glass of it with his face. No helmet or anything, obviously. The motorcycle drags along the side of the Panamera and does a bit of damage to it. And so I hear just screech, bang, crash, boom. And I go out there, and the guy who had kind of let him sit on his motorcycle, that knowing he didn't know how to do it, was like freaking out, trying to pick up the bike. Our sales manager was out there, like noticing all the blood coming out of Nick's face, and he's freaking out. And so I go over there, I kind of grab his face. I'm like, yeah, we're going to have a fun night tonight. And so he comes out, and so fortunately, I don't know, I had like a moving blanket in my car. So I got him in there, and he keeps looking down, and all the blood's just dripping out of his face, all cut up. And so we go up to the emergency room, and there's like little girls with broken arms and stuff like that. And we look like we just came from an axe murderer. And I'm probably the axe murderer because he's the one with all the blood on him. But it was covered in blood. So they get him in immediately. And the first doctor walks in and sees how much blood and how cut up he is. And is like, nope, not doing that. And he goes out and calls another guy. Second dude comes in.
Can you do that as a doctor?
Yeah. I guess they
probably want that. Right?
The second doctor.
Because I don't want a doctor that says, hey, I'll give it a go.
I feel like I got it. I got to learn sometime. So,
I've been doing this for 3 months, so I got it.
That's right. That's right. New personal best for stitches. But the third guy was like the stitch guy, because during the time he was putting about 80 stitches in Nick's face, 2 times people came in like needing the stitch guy, and he's like, no, I can't. And I mean, he's young, kind of vain, just, freaking out. No, he's never going to look like anything but Leatherface again.
Yeah, there's some scarred up 8-year-old girl somewhere because of this guy's motorcycle.
Her arms all,
yeah, the good doctor wasn't available.
I shouldn't have tried to pet the pit bull. I'm to blame. I'll remember every time I try and use peripheral vision or depth perception with my remaining eye.
I just don't know how you put an ear on backwards.
I didn't have two left ears before the pit bull. They grabbed out of the mismatch pile. Anyway, sorry.
They worked on it for 3 hours. It was awful. And I mean, he pulled back a flap of face and an ant walks out that I guess had been on the Porsche. And I was like, Nick, I mean, you got a story from today, but that ant has got really something to tell his friends when he gets back home. But yeah, they got him all stitched up, and I gave him one of my shirts so we could go get some to eat. So it's like, 2, 3 in the morning at that point.
You guys went to White Castle afterwards or something?
Waffle House.
Steak and Shake, absolutely. Ooh, and I mean, nice. He's like wrapped up mummy style on his face. And everybody's like, what in the world? It was like one of those scenes in a movie where they just finished Fight Club, and like, you can tell they're having just a whole different experience than the rest of the guests of the restaurant that night. But no, he was eternally grateful for that. And but the problem was, of course, new employee, no insurance, and no motorcycle insurance to pay medical bills. And so before we leave, they're like, how do you want to pay for this? He's like, well, I don't know. I don't have insurance. And like, we can go speak to our financial counselor. And so we go sit in front of this huge woman that's going to tell us, whatever Nick's going to owe. And she's like, she hands us a bill. It's like $8,500. And he's like, darn it, because he's already got to pay for his total motorcycle over the next like 60 months. And now he's got this huge medical bill that he can't get insurance for. I was like, well, if we walk out of here, I know your collection rates drop pretty fast. So what if we were to pay it right now? And she's like, oh, well, in that case, we could do a pretty big discount. We could probably take like 25% off. I don't know. I mean, it's not convenient to pay it right now. She's like, well, I don't know. What if it was half off? I was like, well, still, that's still $4,000. Man, that's a big Amex bill this month. And she's like, I don't know if I can do any better than that. I said, well, I don't know. Then I can pay any more than what, I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $800. And she's like, let me see what I can do. She starts fake typing. Yeah. And she's like, we'll take it.
And you got like 92% off.
Yeah. And actually, then I pulled out my wallet. I was like, you know what? I've got $500 in cash. And she's like, and then Nick's like, stop.
The Stitch Man needs his payments.
That's right. Yeah.
That is.
I didn't know. I heard you tell that story. Like just 4 hours ago, I was listening to you tell that story, and I felt so stupid because all my life I've negotiated everything. Like if I'm kind of aware of the things that are negotiable. I go buy a new living room suit. I'm haggling with this guy. I know he's on commission. I'm like, is there any wiggle room there? He's like, no, and I think you're getting a good deal here. I'm like, well, I don't really think I am. Maybe I'll go to rooms to go. And let's see what we can do, and just keep going until they're willing to let you walk out the door. That's kind of my modus operandi on most things. Furniture, cars. My Sirius satellite radio, my car insurance, everything. Like Sirius satellite radio will go from like $50 a month to like $8 a month after about a 30-minute phone call. And I had no idea you could negotiate medical bills because I've had to pay some.
I know you could do it. I didn't know you could do it that well. That is what's shocking me, right? When he said $3,000, I'm like, this is hilarious. He's going to meet him in the middle at 31. No, he didn't. He met him at 800 and nearly got 5. That is,
yeah.
I feel like there are times in my life I should just give Ed a call. Hey, I'm about to spend $8,000. I'll split the difference between what I actually spend with you.
Yeah.
You might spend 15 minutes on the phone earning $1,500. That seems worth it. Yeah.
I liked your story about the PCP guy. Would you tell that story because that one to me was
I don't know this one.
Yeah, and also Taylor didn't watch this one. I enjoyed that story.
So when stated income loans were a thing, and it was like 2007, I was in college and I needed a big place to store the cars, and I was this close to buying Terrell Owens' house. He was selling it, and it had also been on MTV Cribs, and it was for sale just in East Atlanta. It was a good drive to Georgia Tech, and I was like, this makes all the sense in the world. Why are we all paying so much rent? And I was going to have like 15 roommates there, and I just narrowly avoided not doing that, thinking like this is going to be the greatest financial decision I ever made. And it sold like 3 or 4 years later for half of what I was going to have to pay for it back then. But instead of that, we ended up living in the west side of Atlanta, which used to be known as just a great place to go and get stabbed. Mm-hmm. It was in this huge duplex where each side had like 6 bedrooms and 2 kitchens. And we were on one side, me and a bunch of my roommates and intramural teammates and stuff like that. And we were out for spring break, but there had always been this Saturn parked like in the best parking spot. There was a big open area that we could all park in, and it never moved. It was disgusting, just covered in tree sap and everything else. And we kept asking the landlord to move it. He kept saying he would, but he never did. And we're just like, come on, get it out of here. And one day we all got, motivated, and we just started just breaking stuff on the car. And nobody really cared. It sat like that for forever. And every time you'd walk by, you just break something else off, break the mirror off, break the window. It was just the punching bag for when you were frustrated with college life. And so we did that for a very long time, and nobody really cared. But when I was gone on spring break, I got a call from one of my roommates that was still there, and he's like, "Man, you will not believe what happened last night." And so apparently a guy that lived on the other side that we never saw or interacted with had come in, and it had been his car. I don't know how it took him months to figure out that his car was not in the condition he left it in. And maybe the tags were 3 years expired. And and another
that
one
was
of
an
our roommates,
investment vehicle. That's what you're
that's
not
it.
understanding.
Those dent-resistant panels didn't do so much dent resisting. But he was yelling, banging on the door, "I've got a gun and I'm going to kill you." And the only thing that they had there to defend themselves with was a intramural softball bat, but they were fully prepared to kill him back for if he came through our little plastic door on this cheap duplex. And he couldn't get the door open, so he decided to throw our grill through the window, and it made it enough to break the window and then kind of fall back on him. And he cut himself on the glass, kind of trying to climb through, and gave up on that and proceeded to bleed all over the few cars that were still left. So we came back, and the whole parking lot and the whole my girlfriend at the time, my wife now's Mustang, was covered in blood. And the cops came, obviously, and arrested him. And they said it was PCP that he was on, and he was feeling none of the pain. But he
went around and was just intentionally
bled on everything.
bleeding on the cars. That was the only.
That's alpha as fuck,
right?
From Fight Club.
Yeah.
Bleeding
And,
on cars.
we actually,
hilarious.
we had a guy that used to detail cars at Lamborghini Atlanta, and he might at one point have stolen a Aston Martin from inventory and then magically found it like a couple days later when he realized he couldn't do anything with it. But he was actually working. I ran into him at a gas station they built right around the corner. And he was running security. He had this huge gun on him and everything. And I said, "You know what?" I was going to dinner somewhere in that area. I said, "I used to live right down the street." And he looked at me like, "What do you mean? You lived here?" Because I guess it's even gotten worse now.
Yeah.
But it's a proper terrible place to live.
Yeah.
That
There's some
sucks.
sketchy parts of Atlanta for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, north side and south side and east side. North, south, and east are all pretty good. I like East Point a lot, but west side of Atlanta can be a little rough.
That's right. But good memories, good stories occasionally.
That wasn't the only
Isn't that sad,
excreter
like,
that you
when
have
you have
to deal
to say
with,
that
though.
about your like childhood city when it's like, "Oh, St. Louis is great. Just don't go north.
Right.
Oh, definitely don't go east. South can be iffy. Be careful."
That's right. The
Actually, where we're standing right now, while we are technically surrounded, fairly safe.
It's a good spot.
Don't move. No, don't go over there. Don't go over there. No, that gas station. No good. We're safe right here.
there you go.
We had.
I want to know. Go ahead, Kyle.
I was going to say we had. You had a story about people like coming into the dealership at night and stealing rims, and another one about some stains that was appearing on the car. I thought both those were interesting. The only experience, and I'd love for you to tell that
one first.
Yeah, the stain one for sure first. My experience with anything like that was homeless men were coming in the winter and sleeping in the inventory.
Is that a soup kitchen, according to that Wahlberg movie?
We used to joke about that. They were not making soup kitchens, but they were sleeping in them, and you could tell like that they had been slept in. I want to say a guy got caught sleeping in the car or something like that. Come in 8 a.m. or whatever, and there's a hobo sleeping in the Tahoe. So it became, then it's on us as salesmen to go around at night and lock every fucking car in its 14-acre lot. It's hundreds and hundreds of pieces.
It's a huge store.
It's a huge store, and we hated it. We hated these hobos so much. To this day, I have a hatred for homeless people that is solely about that. I joke about them all the time on the show, and people think I'm mean about it. This is why. This story right here. They were coming in, sleeping in the car, sneaking them up, and so then we had to go, like, it's closing time. It's time for me. I should be on my way home. But no, I have to go out and lock every single fucking truck. Well, they came, I guess, and it was cold. You know, they came and they tried to click. They're looking for a truck to hide in. Well, we had golf carts to get around the lot. It was a really big lot, and someone had left a golf cart out. This was a problem.
Did they sleep in a golf cart? How's that even helpful?
Oh, they did not sleep in the golf cart.
Okay.
The lot is on a bit of a hill.
Mm.
Nothing crazy steep, but it's definitely
Were
on
they
a slope.
fucking in it?
No, they got in the golf cart. They got it up to maximum speed heading down the hill, and then they jumped out and let it crash right into a brand new vehicle.
Hilarious. They're winning me over.
And we took that as a response to us locking the cars, because it happened shortly after we locked all the cars. We figured that
bleeding all over the car.
It's much better than bleeding all over the cars. But so then the rule is the golf carts all have to be parked inside at night. So these guys are just making all kinds of extra work for us. You had an excreter though.
I hope Kyle mentioned homeless men coming in his story. I hope it's an Ed's too. Carry on.
I don't know the living arrangement this guy enjoyed, but we had a guy. This would probably have been like 2011 or 12, and we were just finding, you know, we have to wash the cars all the time, because even though, you know, they're all worth a lot of money, we don't have enough showroom space to keep them all inside, and so we kept having them. They'd be clean, but there'd be this like sappy residue on the hoods, usually like right around the hood emblems. And we couldn't really figure it out, but it would happen. Like we were trying to move them away from trees, but it was very like spot on, like the center of the hood or front of the bumper. And the detailers would have to grab 2 or 3 of them each day and take them back and clean them off. And one of the dudes came to me one day and was like, "Ed, I think that's urine we're having to clean off these cars." And I'm like, "Well, man, it is kind of yellowish, whatever, but that seems absolutely preposterous that we would be having urine spontaneously occurring on the hoods of cars." And so we ended up going back through the security footage, which was, you know, like it was still like, it's terrible, terrible resolution. But we see this guy in a trench coat in the middle of the night, walking from car to car and standing in front of it for a second, and then taking a camera phone picture and then moving to the next one. And it demonstrated phenomenal prostate control, because he was urinating a little bit on one and then moving along to the next. But it didn't seem like urine, because it was so like sappy and disgusting. And so we called the cops. We're like, "Have you heard of this happening?" And they're like, "No, but that's really weird, and we would very much like to catch the person and get to
We've
talk
got
to them
our
about
own
it."
orange sap problem. Funny you ask.
So I was not like trying to do a car deal or something, and our general manager comes walking across the showroom floor, and he's on his phone. He goes, "Ed, he's back. And he'd gotten bold. He came during the day to do this, and I see a dude kind of wandering across. So I call the chief of police, because literally the police station's across the road from the dealership. So we'd let him borrow cars for parades and stuff like that. We had a good relationship. So they come guns a-blazing. They yell. He's like, "You found the urine bandit?" They had assigned him a name internally.
Hell yeah.
And so they, like, the ones that were in their cars came lights on across the street, and they chased him down behind the neighboring like laundromat, pool hall, pizza place. And some of them were on foot. Like, they shut down the road to come chasing this guy. And they caught him. And he was, I'm sure they yelled, "You're in trouble now."
I want to ask about that, the Cannonball. Like, what got you interested in that record specifically and breaking that record?
Sure. Like, so when I was growing up, you know, you read all these magazines and you see Nürburgring lap times and 0 to 60 times and hot laps and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's cool. But what I'd really care about is like, what car could I drive from point to point the fastest, right? And so I was like, you know, it would be really awesome. I was talking to my father. I was like, if they just lined up like all of the coolest cars with the best drivers and raced from like coast to coast. He goes, "Oh yeah, Cannonball. That sounds like you." And so I start researching everything that I can. And that was in probably 03, 04. And this was a couple years after Brock Yates had released the book. Yates was the founder of Cannonball. He was working at Car and Driver magazine. And so I just started kind of learning everything I could about it, and actually interviewed Yates for a high school project on automotive journalism, and told him one day I wanted to set his record, because nobody had really done it since 1983 with any level of documentation or proof. And so at that point, the record was 32 hours and 7 minutes. And so I said, one day I'm going to beat that. But he had said that he felt like 30 hours was just the wall. He really didn't think that their times could be beaten. But he said either half as many cops and half as many cars on the road, like 30 hours was all that was capable. And, so nobody had really done it. But then a couple of years later, Alan Shroy and Dave Maher did it in a BMW M5 in 31 hours and 4 minutes. And
I know Alex.
There you go. Hey,
yeah,
super nice guy sometimes.
Super nice guy. Ton of fun.
And so I've gotten to know him quite well since then. I'd met him a couple of times and kind of told him like, hey, one day I, plan to do this. And I'm sure he gets it then as often as I do now. And you don't give it a tremendous amount of credence, but it's one of those things. And so I, ended up doing it in 2013. And so we drove New York to LA in 28 hours and 50 minutes, averaging 100.3 miles an hour.
What were you driving and how was it modified?
100.3 miles an hour.
We drove a 2004 Mercedes CL55 AMG. I had actually planned to drive an S55, which is the bigger four-door car. The CL's the two-door version. But when I bought Kimmy's the Prostitutes Gallardo, I was daily driving it and just wasn't driving the Mercedes, so I sold it. And so I had to rebuy one in 2012 to use for the run. But we used that because it's got this auto-leveling hydraulic suspension, so it could cope with the 2 additional fuel cells that we put in. So it had the stock 23-gallon tank and then 2 additional 22-gallon tanks.
Oh, yeah.
67 gallons total. So we could go about 850, 875 miles on a tank of gas. And
at
we
100?
Also had, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Probably go probably to 1,000.
Because that'll hurt your fuel economy a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think that's the number one concern in this.
Yeah. EPA doesn't rate that type of thing.
So how do you accomplish that? Because when I talked to Alex about this one night for like a couple hours, and he said that after he did it, like he had so many requests to come speak to government agencies like law enforcement and stuff, because they're like, all right, cool. How the fuck did you do that? Because this is our job, making sure that you don't do that. And he got all these invitations to speak before like law enforcement agencies all around the country, the federal agencies. And I guess that they had aerial photography of the speed traps and all the speed points, and they had mapped this thing out to a T, and they knew, and maybe they even had a spotter ahead of them or something like that. There was this whole system for like not getting stopped by the cops going 100 in Indiana,
Oh, right.
How did you do that, Ed?
Yeah, because we averaged 110 across the whole state of Indiana.
How did you do
you were
that?
probably tearing it up in the Midwest.
Because you're just trolling for tickets, right? Like dragging a line across the highway, trolling. How did you do that?
So we had 3 radar detectors, 2 laser jammers, a police scanner, an ambulance traffic light changer, a CB radio, multiple phones running apps like Waze and Trapster. We had paper atlases, 2 different powers of binoculars. We had 5 different people that ran ahead of us at different points of the drive to tell us what's going on. Alex had a spotter plane, which was vastly beyond my budget. And so that worked, I think, okay for him. But air-to-ground communication with a moving target on both ends is really, really hard. So they had to stop to change antennas a couple of times. We had twice as much fuel as he had, so it was a little bit easier for us. And with forced induction, the supercharged Mercedes was probably a little bit better fit, and I had 100 more horsepower. But it was really, you kind of get there to New York City with a capable car and a sufficiently capable team, and it's kind of like you pull the arm on like this mythical slot machine that reveals the outcomes of all these variables that you can't control. How's the weather? How's the traffic? How's the construction? Are there accidents? Does the car break? Are there a ton of cops? And literally everything went perfectly. I mean, it was. I've done it, since then several times in like cheap and old cars as part of other events that are kind of also tribute to Cannonball. And I've never been out there on the road when it was possible in probably 7 or 8 tries since then that it would even have been, even with a car that fast, to have beaten 2850. And so it's hard to explain. I think if you gave me $250,000 and 10 more tries, I don't think I would end up beating it, just because I don't think all the stuff I couldn't control would go well.
Let's talk bathroom breaks. All right, what do you do when you got to go?
We had facilities on board for such things. We had pee bottles and a bedpan, but we didn't use any of it, honestly, because we stopped 3 times for gas. And we stopped about every 200 to 300 miles just for like a 60-second switch drivers stop, stretch your legs, avoid blood clots, and kind of, you drive fastest in your first and last 15 minutes. And so it would just more that time, and you easily made up the time from when you were not moving. And so we'd pee then and be fine just on the side of the road.
Yeah.
What is an ambulance light changer?
So it's like
And where do you get one?
LED circle, and it's
Is it like there's like an ambulance going with someone with a broken femur, and you're like, not anymore, and you turn it off? Like,
so most of them work on encryption, but in California back in 2013 they weren't encrypted. So you don't spend a lot of time on surface streets, so it's not all that useful. It's really cool to say you've got it, and I've enjoyed that. But the only one it worked on is like crossing the last street that you have to go on, and we just ran it anyway. It didn't matter.
So,
What
but
did
this
it do?
thing, is it a thing that people can buy? And I
Changing
assume it's
the light from
illegal.
red to green.
There used to be a company that sold them under the brand
You don't know
Omnitron.
He's
I didn't-
controlling the traffic light.
Yeah, ambulances though they get mostly green lights with this device.
Yeah, but sometimes, depending on the setup and
That's
how
so fucking
how
funny.
they're wired, it usually actually just turns them all red. So it's red in all directions, and they run it. Sometimes it turns them green. In California, it turned it green. But you've always heard that rumor that if you flash your bright lights too fast at a traffic light, it'll change. And that would be a pure happenstance that you hit the right frequency. But that's what's happening here. It's just a little bit more programmed and a little higher frequency, more likely to work.
That's great. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Alex
that's
is a ridiculous fucking guy. Like he's a character. Like I'm sure when you saw him, he had that jacket on, didn't he?
Oh, he loves the jacket. Absolutely. And,
Is it a bomber jacket? A big 8-ball jacket?
It's like a German police jacket covered in buttons and insignia.
It's a German jacket from the late 30s.
He looks like a cross between like the most decorated highway patrol officer of all time and an astronaut from the 60s. Like it's
With a
ridiculous.
little Dr. Evil sprinkled in. Fraudulent if a customer takes out a life insurance policy on you?
Yeah.
I
Only
didn't know
if
that
they
you
kill
could-
you.
You're right. Yeah, he didn't do that.
A customer took out a life insurance policy on you?
He sold life insurance, and he calls me one day and goes, "Ed, how healthy are you?" And I said, I didn't die yet today." And he said, "I send somebody to take some blood." Yeah, I guess so. You bought a lot of Lamborghinis. I'm in the yes part of our relationship right now. And he bought a huge term life insurance or whole life insurance policy, the expensive kind. And I was like, and he's like, "I'll send you money every month to pay it, but I get enough of a bonus to make it worth." And it was a lot. It was like $400 or $500 a month that he had to send me to pay the premiums for this thing that he had sold.
That's awesome.
Well, he got
I
such a
didn't
big
have
bonus
to do
it was
any
worth it.
medical tests. to
I
get life
literally
insurance.
thought it was the other way. He was like, you know what? This guy goes to 150 and hits the brake a lot. I'm going to roll the dice that one of these times the brakes don't work. It's like betting at the casino.
Yeah, there was definitely a time when I wouldn't have been surprised if someone had made me that same offer. How healthy are you? I mean, I don't really know. I don't go to the doctor. Well, let's try it. But they said I'm going to send someone to take blood. That's always a big no for me because I always turn that down. Whenever asked for blood, unless there's a court order, I always say
Your
no.
DNA is top secret. Is that the
or is it a needle thing?
It's like I don't give my blood out to people who just want it for no. What do you mean? Can I have some of your blood, Taylor?
Yeah.
No.
Of course you can't. Of course
Why not?
If you had said a magic word, I would have said yes.
Is that word please?
Right. Is it
May
AIDS?
Could
I
I
please have
please
some
have
of your
some
blood,
of
Taylor?
your blood,
Of
Taylor?
course. I'll have a quart in
Just
the mail
enough
tomorrow.
to sustain me for a bit longer.
A quart of blood. Can you imagine if I shipped you just a quart of blood in an old milk container? That would
No,
be
I wouldn't do
worthwhile.
that. That's that scenario that I told you guys a while back with the whole paternity thing, where someone just shows up to the guy and they're like, "Hey, I need your DNA," and he's such a knucklehead that he's like, "Okay," and he does the cheek swap thing for him, and they're like, "Have a nice day," and disappears, and then they slap his brother with that paternity suit, right?
Mm.
You don't give your
I
fucking
remember that.
DNA out. You never know when you're gonna fucking one of your
Yeah.
family members up.
I'm on that page
Is
for
that a
sure when it
scam?
comes to
No, no,
but 23andMe, they sell your genetic data to pharmaceutical firms and things. That's a known thing they do,
and
so
the government.
in the government, yeah, as if the government couldn't just requisition that at any point and get it.
Well, they
from
need
them
a
if they
court
wanted.
order.
And so, I don't know what the fuck they're doing, all the little plans, but I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want my DNA floating around.
I've told you how to get
best
around that,
case
Taylor.
scenario is I
Yeah,
ship
you
it to
just
them and I'm
fake
like,
name,
wow,
fake
cool.
everything, right?
Fake name, fake everything. Then they've got DNA and a fake name, and
You know
get
what
the
I would?
results back.
You know, it'd be good. I'll put a Japanese name in, to see if there's any bias. Because what if they run me through and they're like, Hiroshi Nagasaki came back as almost entirely Southern European with some Northern European. There's not even a lick of Japanese, much less Asian. Like, I would want to know if they would add some Asian in, like a little bit of Japanese. To try
I see it a little now that I look.
Oh, oh! You tell me I'm not from Italy?
Italy.
This is mind blowing. I watched the video today or yesterday of you successfully somehow talking down going 126 in a 60 and not going to fucking jail. Like, is that the most insane one you've ever talked your way out of, or is that not even close? It is.
Well, I mean, I've gotten pulled over a lot in exotic cars, and usually it's not that big of a deal, but that one was nuts because I'm not exactly sure how bamboozled I was kind of from the whole thing. Because, like, we were driving up to Cars and Coffee in Charlotte, and I was driving a Roof RT12S, which is kind of like a really fast version of something that looks like a Porsche. It's made out of a bunch of Porsche parts, but it has 730 horsepower, or at least it's supposed to. And so we were just driving up. It was late at night, probably 11, 12 o'clock. And this regular 911 comes up next to me and is kind of trying to play. And so he passes me, and I just blast past, probably going 150, 60 miles an hour. And we kind of go around for a little while, probably drive 120, 150 for about, I don't know, half an hour. And then he just kind of pulls off. Okay, cool, whatever. So we had probably an hour to go. But about 5 minutes later, there's blue lights behind me. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I was probably only going 90 at that point, which I guess is just cause to be behind me. But
yeah, that's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I didn't see him. So I don't, I had a radar detector running. It was, I shouldn't have been surprised by such a thing. So I pull over, and he's like, where y'all headed? We're going up this car show. And he's like, any reason you're driving so fast? I don't know, just, to get there. And he says, well, I just clocked you at 126 and a 60. And I go, goodness gracious.
Is that what you said? Goodness gracious?
Yeah. And he goes, that's what I thought. And I was like, yeah, sorry about that. And he's like, you got your license and registration. And I had an expired insurance card because in Georgia, it's all in a system, whatever. So I had to explain that to him, and he was a little bit upset about it. But I tell the guy that's with me, I was like, all right, he's either going to come back and take me to jail, or he's going to write me tickets for everything, following too close, too fast for conditions, failure to maintain lane, speeding here, speeding there, all this stuff. So he won't have to work for the next week. And but then he comes back, like, not long, maybe 5 minutes later, and hands everything back to me and is like, yeah, here's your ticket. It's for 126 and a 60. And you don't have to appear or anything. You just send in this amount. It's $356 or something like that. Like, really?
Is that like 100 points? Like, isn't that a thing?
Well, usually there's
they cut up your license in front of you.
It probably ought to, and a lot. I mean, in most states, it's within their jurisdiction to arrest you for that. But he said he didn't. The ticket didn't say how he had detected my speed. There wasn't even a blank for it in South Carolina. It was in like Anderson, South Carolina. And so I was like, well, that's fantastic. So I, catch up to the other car we're driving with, and I was like, all right, I guess I got to figure this out. So Monday, I get back to Atlanta, and the best thing to do whenever you get a ticket in another place is you need to hire a lawyer locally, because if I paid a ticket for that, it might not translate back because Georgia's not a driver's license compact state, but it might not give me any points, but the insurance would see it, and I would get, and they never want to give me insurance anymore. And so I was like, well, I called a bunch, and I was like, this is what happened. And they're like, well, what do you want us to do? Make it 100? Like, that's a pretty bad day. I was like, well, actually, I'd like it to be 14 over or less, because that won't translate to any points here, even if it does come back. And they're all like, no, we can't do that. But then
this is the attorney that's saying no? Or
the attorneys were all saying, like, we can't help you with that. And I was like, well, that stinks. Usually $500 will get you out of any ticket anywhere in the country. And there's a new app that has sponsored our channel a couple times called Off the Record that refers people to that. That's like their whole business, is helping people find the right local lawyer. And usually Google is good, but sometimes they don't really advertise well, because they're in any jurisdiction. There's some dude that plays golf with the judge on Thursdays, and they get whatever they want. So later that afternoon, I get a phone call from a South Carolina area code, and he's like, I heard you got a ticket. I did get a ticket. I was like, did somebody refer me to? He's like, yeah. He's like, who was the officer? So, well, it said, I won't say his name. And I said, he's like, I know. I think I know who that is, because like initials. And he's like, I think I know who it is. And he was correct. And so he's like, for $500, I'll work on it for you, and I think we'll figure something out. Great. Yes to that. And so he calls me back like an hour later. He goes, well, he knew why I was calling. He picked up the phone and said, hey, you got my 126 guy? Like, yeah, I do. And he's like, what do you need? Like, he wants it to be 14 over. And he goes, yeah, all right, whatever. I don't care. And so he called. He's like, yeah. And actually, when they put it through, it was 11 over. And I was like, is there like a benevolence fund I need to donate to, or somebody I need to like, send a cake to, or an edible arrangement? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. Just whatever. Give me a good Google review. But as I searched for him, I found his Facebook profile, and he was employed as the solicitor for that county.
Oh no, he's not a lawyer.
Which meant that it was up to him what I got. Because, if you go to court, and you can either have a trial, or you can plead guilty, or you can speak to the solicitor. And so I think he just figured it out, or like and called me and was like, hey, can I have $500? And I was very happy to say, absolutely, yes.
He bamboozled you.
Bribery.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He accepted a bribe. Like, that's not.
I think so.
That's pretty cool.
How about that? Yeah, so I got a good story out of it. So,
Well,
I know,
nice.
man. Well worth.
And he's still gainfully employed.
I feel like I spend too much time settling for things. If I got a ticket, I might pay it.
Yeah, don't pay that. Don't pay that ticket.
I need to do,
I feel like Ed is going through drive-thrus.
WWEBD.
He's like, let's talk about this dollar menu you've got here. Now, how much in parts are you really putting into that McDouble? Yeah, I've done the analysis, and it's 14 cents. I'll give you a quarter.
Some of these things laying around collecting dust up there. Don't act like they're not already under the warmer. You need to get them out the door so people don't call your boss and complain.
You don't even want people who paid 99 cents for this dollar menu. Anyone who bought that at $1 is assuming liability. You'll end up getting sued.
That's right. You're gonna, if I pay you a quarter, I know you didn't get me fat. I got me fat. Right? I'm not your problem anymore.
You've got some nightmare stories of test drives that gone wrong, and people banging into shit. And I mean, you curb the rims on a Lambo, and you could be looking at over
probably $500.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Most of the wheels are $4,000 to $5,000 each, and they don't necessarily repair well.
Yeah.
I think I only crashed. I hit a deer in one Lambo, which I don't really consider to be my fault, but the deer continue to haunt me. But I did crash an Aventador, like the first used one we ever got. I was like 4:45 in Metro Atlanta, which, as you know, is a terrible, terrible time to get out on a road. And a friend of the owner of the dealership came in, and the general manager's like, "Hey, Ed, give this kid a ride." He had like an 8-year-old kid, and I was like, "So you want me to go sit in traffic with this kid in this car?" And he's like, "Exactly, yeah, just please do that." So I go out there and pull the car around, and the dad asks if he can ride with the kid in his lap. And I don't have kids at the time. I don't think, that's a stupid idea. I think it's preposterous. But I asked my boss, like, "Do you want me to do that?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And so we take a right out onto the main road there, and there's kind of like a multi-use turn lane, and I'm just kind of proceeding along to make a right, and because traffic is just stopped, like literally gridlocked, and we can move a little bit in the turn lane, and this guy stops traffic to wave somebody across, and it's this gigantic guy in a 2001 Chrysler Sebring convertible, and he just stomps it, comes flying through. I stand on the brakes. We're not going that fast, probably get down to under 10 miles an hour, and almost get stopped, but he comes just soaring in, and we just tap him. But it was right square in the middle of the front bumper, and right kind of just in front of his rear right wheel, and it fires all the airbags.
Oh no!
And it literally just cracked a hole about this big where the emblem is on the hood of the bumper of the Aventador, and this was still a $400,000 car at the time. And
it's like a nice home.
I know, it's a really nice house.
So it turns the radio off, blows a charge in the steering column to make it all flimsy, drops the windows, turns on the flashers, blows the side, no, doesn't blow the side airbags, blows both front airbags and the knee airbags. So there's just powder everywhere. And this kid is screaming. I mean, the kid just got walloped by an airbag sitting in the lap of his dad.
Yeah.
And so, and we get out, and the dude wasn't wearing his seatbelt and was wedged into this thing. So he like falls out of the car.
Was he fat?
Yeah, real fat.
You know, and of course, it's right in front of like the lowest rent apartment complex in that area. So there's a huge crowd, and they're all like, "That Lamborghini is going to buy you a house." And well, darn it, no, that's not going to happen. And so I'm like, "Is that kid all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think so." And so we get out, and it immediately starts the longest traffic jam you've ever seen. It's a bright orange Lamborghini, doors up, everybody's taking a picture. And, darn it. And so I call my boss. I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry. And so, you know, we get it all sorted out, get the car towed away. It takes darn forever. And the next day, this guy shows up that I'd hit, and you know, he had definitely didn't have insurance. And I'm like, well, you can file it. Our insurance will, you can file it, and they'll buy you a new Chrysler or whatever, and they'll pay any bills you have or whatever. He's like, man, I need money now. And I'm like, well, that's not really something I can help you with. You know, I appreciate that you want that, but you know, I don't know what to do. And so he's like, hey, what can you do? Like, my mom got some money from somebody else. Well, I mean, you can hire an ambulance chasing attorney. I don't think you're going to have a great deal of success, but if you feel that's the best bet, you know, by all means. And so this was 3 months after I had set the world record for speeding across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were all a little bit concerned that a proper ambulance chaser might find that out and have an issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also when the prior year, the owner of the dealership ran a red light in a Bentley Continental Super Sports and totaled it. And the general manager totaled a car on a test drive running a red light and had hit a BMW pretty hard, and that had been a really bad one. So this was 3 in a year. So we were probably going to get dropped from the insurance anyway as a dealership. And so it was, the owner of the dealership was like, well, if you can get him to take some small amount of money to go away and we can make him sign some indemnification, by all means, you know, I'm happy to do that. And so I ended up getting him to take $3,000, $3,500, something like that. And they were very, very pleased to have it. And so he went off on his way, and we fixed the Aventador, and I sold it to, who did I sell it to? Oh, some guy. He traded in Busta Rhymes' Green Mercy. It was on MTV Cribs.
That's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Had neon lights everywhere. Proper disgusting car.
Do you make money on all these exotic cars? Like, how often do you take a loss? They can't all be winners, right?
I have made money on all the exotics that I've owned personally. As a dealership, no, you lose money on a good bit of them. I mean, you know, in the aggregate, exotic cars depreciate about 1% a month. So all cars depreciate on an average 1% a month. And so if you've got $12 million in inventory, I mean, you may have $120,000 of depreciation you've got to deal with of your inventory in a month.
That's because watching YouTube, it seems like these cars all gain value. That's how they make it sound. Like, yeah, I bought this McLaren for X and it's worth 5X in a few years. Did we lose him?
I think we just lost.
There we go.
There we go. There we go.
No,
We're
he's
good.
there. We just lost the camera for a second.
How can you tell if it's going to appreciate or depreciate? Is that an obvious thing that you know?
Well, it's generally going to be a combination of rarity and significance of the car and, you know, general trends. So if you see the previous generation appreciate, you can start to assume that the next generation will eventually. So I've had pretty good success just focusing mostly on being a manual transmission, being rare, and having some historical significance.
Yeah.
I was listening to a couple of videos, and I love your whole bit where you're like, this fucking whore wanted $75,000 for her Lamborghini Murcielago, and so I offered her $30,000, but she was shrewd, and so we met right in the middle at $30,000. Like over and over, you have those, and that's so fucking funny. Like, what I want to hear, like, what that process is like, because there wasn't any middle ground. Like, when she came at you at 75, and you're like, 30 sounds more realistic. She had to have pitched a bit of a fit, or there's got to be some story in the middle, right?
Well, there's a narrative to make it all seem fair. I was actually trying to buy a repossessed Ferrari from a bank in like Central Georgia a few months ago,
Mhm.
and I was the lowest bidder, and there were several bids above me, but I started down this line of logic, like anyone who will pay you more than I'm offering is so stupid that they don't understand the risks they're taking with all the things that can go wrong with this car you've got. And so if you make the mistake of selling it to them for more money than I'm willing to pay you, you're incurring the liability of them having to sue you because they've misunderstood this product. And this woman was like, "You're right. That's a terrible idea. I can't sell that car. I mean, I'm going to get us sued. I'm going to lose my job." And unfortunately, her boss heard her say that, and it's like, "No, we're going to give it to the people that want to pay more for it." We tried, but in that circumstance, there was nobody else that was going to buy it because the risk versus the potential profit was really zero. So essentially, people go and get pre-purchase inspections on exotic cars or on a lot of cars that they buy pre-owned. But if you don't do that, all you have to do is essentially pad the offer by everything that you could have possibly go wrong, and then you don't need to have it inspected. So I'm usually willing to buy it a lot faster, and generally pay cash now. That's
Mhm.
but nobody else is going to bid against me in that circumstance. They're all going to say, "Well, I'll pay more, but I want to get my mechanic to check it out and all this." And they know stuff's wrong with it. They may not know everything that's wrong with it, but as you kind of scare them into all the things it could be, they're usually pretty ready to negotiate.
What was her boss like? Was he wearing like a pink velvet top hat and cape and a diamond cane?
I'd like to think so. But,
Platform shoes with goldfish in them.
This was not the prostitute's boss, but
damn it! That's what I thought we were talking about.
No, this was the Ferrari at the bank. That was the Lamborghini.
So, but did they sold it to someone who was willing to pay more, right? Like that.
They did, yes. Yeah. I didn't get to buy that one. Shrewd negotiation did not work out, but
you did get it from the prostitute.
I did get the prostitute's Lamborghini. Yeah, that was actually today's story.
The prostitute story is hilarious to me.
It is so fucking funny.
This half black, half Vietnamese prostitute who was in jail at the time that the car came to you and only got out for a brief time, it would seem. How big was her hip size? 50 something inches?
50 inches, according to I think a now defunct Instagram account.
That is.
I think your line on that was she could take a break hula hooping.
Yeah, that's
a great line.
That one's done well.
What's the best, or what's the negotiation you're most proud of? Like if you looked back, one that you're like, hell yeah, I've won a lot. That one, that's my whale.
There's actually two. One is that roof that I was driving. I had been trying to buy that car. There's only 3 of them in the U.S. They're RT12Ss. That one was an 06. I think there's an 08 and an 09. And I had seen it at a dealership in South Florida.
What color was it?
And it was matte black with a brown interior, which was really kind of unique. Like it's a strange color combination to have.
What year was it?
06.
I think I'm literally looking at it. Did it have red side view mirrors by chance?
It did at one point. They had been painted black when I got the car.
Yeah.
And it was an awesome car. It's probably $350,000 new, and it had actually gone back to the factory for some updates at one point. And I saw it, and the guy was trying to trade it on an Aventador back in 2012, and he had kind of run into a snag because he was doing it at Lamborghini Palm Beach. And Lamborghini Palm Beach has had several different kind of regimes of management. And the general manager that came in didn't know what it was. And it looks like a Porsche 911 Turbo, but it has a different VIN. And it was actually, since it was an 06, they didn't make turbos that year. They made them in 05, they made them in 07. And so there wasn't even a nice Porsche comp. Mm-hmm. So he thought it was just like a $30,000 Carrera. And so the guy had an agreement with the previous general manager to get $130,000 on trade if they didn't sell it beforehand as a consignment. And I kept asking him, like, hey, can I have it? But well, when he came in, he said, I'm not giving you $130,000. I don't care what you've got in writing. You can sue me over it. And of course, the guy did. So he got caught up in a lawsuit for like 3 years. They sold his Aventador to somebody else. And eventually, I guess they ended up settling with the next general manager. But the car just kind of disappeared into South Florida. I'm like, darn it, I lost it. And I always thought it was going to be really, really cool to own a roof car, because back when Porsche wouldn't license to Gran Turismo, that was the car that looked like Porsches that they used. And so that's where most people recognize roof. They usually call it rough or something like that because it's RUF.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just browsing. I'd quit working at the dealership because I just got tired of the hours in November of 15. And December, I'm obviously have a lot of time on my hands. I'm browsing Craigslist internationally, and I find a listing for a roof that's matte black over brown in upstate New York. And it literally didn't have anything other than a picture of the dials, the gauges. And I call the guy and I'm like, you don't have this car, do you? He said, no, I know the owner and he wants me to sell it. He was a broker, which is scum of the exotic car earth. And I'm like, all right, well, I know this, and this. I talked to him all about the car. He said, well, I didn't know any of that junk. So I'm like, well, but I am a check writer. I will buy this car, but it already has enough of a stigma from sitting outside with matte paint, which deteriorates badly in South Florida. Like, I need you to pull this ad down because I don't need you to add to it the stigma of being on Craigslist for too long. And he didn't have a price on it. And I'm like, I know that the previous dealer hit him at 75 grand for the car, which, obviously didn't work out. I said, but now it's set for 3 years. I know it's going to need more work, so I need to pay less than that. And he's like, that makes sense. I said, it sure does. It sure does. And so I walk him through all the crazy worst case scenario things the thing could need, and end up getting him to agree to 69 grand and agree to not ask for any other bids. And so he takes it to the owner and he agrees to take it. And I'm like, well, darn it, that was crazy. I mean, like the car was easily worth, twice that. And so I go down to Miami, I pick it up and drive it back. And the car wasn't right. Like when I drove it back from Miami, the car's supposed to go 228 miles an hour, which is not insignificant. And I got up to like 185 on the turnpike, and it was not really accelerating anymore. I'm like, this thing doesn't have another 40 miles in it. And
I love picturing you going 185 miles an hour on just a road that people drive on. And you're not terrified. You're just like, well, this isn't up to snuff. I was expecting to be going thrice the speed of people around me, not just 2.5 times.
Right.
I can still tell these cars I'm passing are moving.
Exactly. And it had, there was something wrong with the suspension. Roof had used a Moton hydraulic suspension, and it was not stable at all. It had a great differential in it. So if you were turning, it was great. But if you were going straight, the thing would just jump between lanes. And so it was terrifying to drive. And so I ended up trying to sell it and got a couple of offers, but nobody could ever get financed or buy it. And so I ended up selling it to the former roof dealer in the US for 154 grand about a year later. And so made a nice little hit, best percentage based flip that I've ever had.
That's
huge. Yeah, especially when you're unemployed and trying to launch a vehicle history reporting app. So it was great. Huge kind of godsend thing there.
I'm still bamboozled by the shit you're peddling. You know what? I'm going to need you to take down this for sale ad because of the stigma that it might have.
Right.
That's not what you wanted. No other bidders, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there was no way anybody would ever find it. I mean, it didn't have
Is
the
your
VIN
last
on it or
name
anything.
Capone? How are you doing this?
That's right. If you don't want a horse's
No, what
head
I'm
in
going to
you,
ask you to do here is not offer it to anyone else and also give me a 75% discount. And who knows? Maybe those kneecaps stay right where they are.
Exactly.
I'm not asking for enough in life. Clearly.
But probably not. Yeah.
I need to be
I think you're afraid of. You can't be afraid. For me, it's always there was a time when I was really afraid of making some sort of social faux pas when negotiating, and then I started thinking I'm not going to see this motherfucker again. I don't care if he thinks
it's kind of karma based, right?
I don't believe in karma.
The world's treated me well. I'm happy with the way things are. I'm just not supposed to nickel and really twist the knife on the other people around me.
No. So I tip the guy I buy the car from, but I want the best deal I can get. I always appreciated that. If somebody whittled me down and maybe even what I felt was I ended up with a mini deal, which for us was fucking $50. And it's just excruciating for 4 hours worth of work when I see my buddies over here making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe on a Saturday, and I've made $50 and the day's halfway gone, and the guy tips me $150 at the end. I'm pretty happy. I'm like, oh well, that guy gets it. Piece of
Are a
shit.
lot of, were a lot of the people who would come in, like I know that probably all of them negotiate to some extent, but did you ever deal with someone who was so, and this is just someone who doesn't work in that industry of exotic cars. Like I imagine some people come in and they're so inordinately wealthy that this doesn't even register to them
Right.
as a big purchase. Like would you have those people come in where you'd say, this is the sticker? And they'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever, do it.
Sometimes,
never
I mean,
that.
most people again have that kind of badge of honor, and even if you can negotiate on the price, it's in your best interest not to, because people who pay you the most profit are always the happiest customers because they're buying based on the value they place on the car, not based on the deal you give them. I mean, essentially, no deal can be good enough to make you love a car you didn't want to love.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's better to knock their heads off and make a lot of money and make sure they actually like the car than it is to make a little bit and have them hate you for it next time.
This
I haven't
is all
heard someone use that term in
twisting
so
my
long.
head.
I love that.
Knock their heads
What
off.
term?
Knock their heads off.
Knock
Yeah.
their heads off. So
Yeah.
I just sold a paramotor, right? Making about paramotors. Sold it for $4,500, which is a good price. I think that's $500 or maybe $750 less than I could have gotten for it.
Sure.
The buyer's active duty military. I think he's literally in Iraq right now, and he sent his wife over to come pick it up. And I set the price that low so that I wouldn't have to
Paramotor, special forces.
Yeah, right. And it's so that I wouldn't have to negotiate, and so that no one would ever feel like I had taken them, because it's a small community, and I don't want to be that guy. And now I'm like twisted up and stuff. Like Ed would have gotten $7,000 for it. Maybe I'm being dumb, throwing away money. Whereas I walked away thinking I gave a good deal to a guy who could appreciate it. And
Yeah, you got your small community thing though. That's and it's a
This
veteran,
is a paramotor
right?
flown by
Active
by
duty.
Me, a
And I
famous
know that-
YouTuber.
I know you don't think much of
That's not true.
veterans in that. What do you call them? Scum? I'm kidding. But you know, I think you did a good thing there. Like it's a little different. Like I've you know, I fucked some people over the, you know, a lady came in and we sat down before she even got to go on the lot, and you know, what are you looking for? Do you want? And she knew what kind of car, and I don't remember what it was, but let's just say she wanted a 2004 Corolla. So like, you know, we've got three of them, and this one's a 2002, this one's a 2003, and this is a 2004, and I pull all three of them up to the door, but before I do it, I change the prices on all of them. I make them all $3,000 expensive. So we go out there and I'm like, you know what? This is this one. This is that one. These are the differences. This is why they're about $1,000 more for each one. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm in a hurry today. If you want to buy a car today, cha-cha, $3,000 discount across the board. What do you say? And she's just like, holy shit, you're just gonna rip $3,000 off? I was like, if we can do it right now, I gotta get out of here. I got a plane to catch, and I'm not going any fucking where.
I gotta go to the LA Swindlers Convention.
but to his point, like she was so happy with the deal she was getting and the quality of. She thought she just gotten a great deal, so she was very happy about everything. She loved me this whole way through. She's just like, this young man right here has it. He is a treasure. You know, she's just tickled pink, and she's paid the sticker price. And we had a code built into our sticker prices where the last number in the price, let's say it's 19,991, it's going to be 991, 992, 993, or 994. And that last number is letting me know how much this car has been discounted. It probably came in and we put like $5,000 profit on it, or $4,000. And every time they discount the second number in the price, which is $1,000 off the price, they change the last number too, to give the salesman an idea of how many times it's been discounted. I know we've got at least $3,000 on the front end of each one of these cars, 3 or 4. So I'm doing pretty fucking well already. So, you know, she's paying $3,000 to $4,000 profit on the front end, but she thinks she just got $3,000 taken off. You know, it kind of put that lady together a little bit. And then there was another lady.
you knocked her head off.
I knocked
That's
her
it.
head off. To some
Does knock
extent.
your head off mean take advantage of someone?
No, not take
Means
advantage. but
make a ton of profit.
it means
Okay.
it means I did my job well that day.
Seems to mean both.
And, you know,
Potato.
But it's sales, you know, I'm not going to judge.
I sold a lady a new Focus one time, and I got the sales sheet, and I sat down and I started sometimes I get ahead of myself, and I would just see what I could do, because I feel like you can always ask forgiveness later. You can always say there was a mistake, or, oh, well, that's not supposed to say that, or, they expect the price to be a little iffy. So I just blacked out what my manager wrote, and I told her that it was an extra $2,000 as we sat down, and she agreed to it, and it was a new Focus. And I go back up there with a signature. My manager's like, "Did you just sell a Ford Focus at a premium? Did you just sell a Ford Focus for $2,000 over sticker price?" I was like, "I sold permaplate too," which is this bullshit fabric. And
What is permaplate?
Permaplate was a lie. I was told we didn't even put it on the cars, but we would sell it for, I think, $695, and essentially it's a warranty against stains and like acid rain spots and bullshit like that. And I never saw anyone ever come in and be like, "Hey, I bought the permaplate, stain right here in my seat, fix it." Never happened once. But for $695, we would sell that stuff to you. And I had this whole kit on my desk where I'd stain a little swatch of fabric, and I'd spray some shit on it, just wipe it right off, coffee or whatever. Usually coffee, because we got the coffee maker right there. I'd just pour the coffee on it, be like, "This has permaplate on it. This doesn't." And that would sell people for $700 of just extra gross. So like I sold her so high over sticker that they wouldn't even finance it at that. Like, she got into finance, and they were like, the financial institution says, "This is too much for this car. Like she's going to owe so much more than this car is worth on day one. Like, they won't even do it." And I'm like, "We'll find out exactly what they will do."
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come in and be like, "You know what? You're the 100th customer. Holy shit. This happens once a month, but $1,100 discount." And she's just like, "Oh, Mr. Kyle, I am so my lucky day, new car, 100th customer." Oh, she was so happy. She was so happy. That was the same lady who told me, she was like, it was nearing Christmas, and she had a kid with her.
In this story, she's gone from Little House on the Prairie to Kimmy's Vietnamese mom.
Oh no, this is a little Spanish lady.
Okay.
Yeah, and she had her little kid with her, and she said something along the lines of, "But if I pay this much for the car, there can be no Christmas for the children." And I said, What's a better Christmas gift than a brand new car? Looking at the kid, I was like, "Don't you want a new car?"
I know, when I was a kid, if my mom had a Focus, it would make Christmas.
Yeah.
I was like, we talked about that Ford safety sensing system, didn't we? It's going to weigh little Javier and make sure those airbags come out just the right speed. Don't forget, you want to keep his little noggins. And yes,
But Mama, I wanted a super soaker this year.
Shut up, Javier. I gave you candy. Javier was sold, though. It went well. That was one of my favorite moments. Just couldn't. My manager's face when I sold that, and I did that also on like the most undesirable car of all time. It was the Ford
CrossFit.
500.
It was like a freestyle, I think. It was the 500 wagon, essentially. It was on like this Volvo chassis that was like lumbering, and it was hideous. It was in this green color too, like this pea green puke.
Rare color.
It was it was awful. It was awful. And this British guy came in, and I must have
racing color of the UK.
Hello, sir. This seems to complement my teeth.
Jesus Christ.